employer make when trying to recruit more women. Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Laura. Okay, guys, it's about 2:02, so I'll just start getting started. I know you guys value your time. My name is Joel Cheeseman. I'm the founder of Ratedly, who most of you probably know. If not, we are a service that monitors anonymous employee reviews around the web. And InHer site is one of the sites that we monitor for our customers. And I ran into Ursula at the HR Tech conference show in Chicago last month, and I twisted her arm to the point that she agreed to do a webinar for us. So I know that I do these webinars fairly frequently, but I know that you guys get tired of my voice and what I'm talking about. So we want to bring on some guest speakers who have great expertise in certain aspects of employer branding or employer review um, monitoring or strategies. So we wanted to bring Ursula on. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ursula. If anyone has a question, they can type it into the chat room, and I can relay that to Ursula and ask her the question. We do encourage engagement, participation. We know that these webinars are supposed to be interactive, so if you have a question, just chime in on the chat room. Otherwise, I'll send some contact information afterwards that you guys can either talk directly to Ursula or me with questions or comments. So Ursula, if you're ready, check, check.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So I'm going to hand it over to you and tell us about the 5 mistakes employers make when they try to recruit women.
I will. I'm very excited that you invited me to host this today because recruiting women is critical to the health and success of your companies. So kudos for taking the time to learn more about how to avoid some of the common pitfalls that we see. But before I jump in, I wanted to quickly tell you a little bit about InHer site so that you know where our data and findings are coming from and a little bit more about our perspective on some of the mistakes that we see companies making. I am the CEO and founder of InHer site, and we are a company ratings platform for women. And we have hundreds of thousands of women who are researching companies on our site to find workplaces that support their goals. And here's a quick overview of how it works. Women come to the site and they rate their companies on 14 factors that matter to women. These are things like female representation in leadership, flexibility, salary satisfaction, and parental leave policies. And then we take all of their data and their ratings and we use them to match women to companies that have what they're looking for. So to get matched to companies, women have to register with us and they tell us more about themselves. And this is where a lot of our data is coming from for this particular talk. They tell us where they're located, what industries they work in, their fields, and of course they tell us which of the factors that we collect data on are most important to them. What do they really want from companies when they're looking for jobs? And then we take all of those inputs that they've given us and we use them to generate a list of top companies that are based on the issues and policies that are most relevant to them as an individual. So I hope this is true because I've framed up a lot of my talk in this way, but I'm going to assume that much of our audience today comes from the HR team at a company or somewhere in the people and recruiting department. So I want to take a quick minute to just share one of the things that I think is incredibly important for you to know about what we're doing at InHer site. So if there's only one thing that you remember about what we do, I hope it's this. And that is that we are measuring the things that are important to women, but these are also the things that you at companies can do something about. All of our 14 factors are areas where you have hard policies, specific initiatives, or they're areas that you are actively monitoring and trying to manage. And if you aren't managing them, you probably should be. We aren't measuring you as a company on something very, very general like whether someone would recommend working for you, or how someone feels about your CEO, or how happy an employee is in general. And that's because, frankly, I don't actually know what specific actions you as a company can take based on that data. But instead, when I'm talking about all of our ratings and all of our data, I'm talking about things that we're measuring that women care about that you can affect. And we've been doing this for almost 3 years now. So we have data from more than 100,000 women for more than 18,000 companies in the US. And we know a lot about what is working for women, what isn't working for women, what drives their satisfaction at work, what they're looking for from companies, and more. We're just going to talk about a tiny bit of what we're seeing today, but I would encourage you to check out more of the data that we're publishing on a regular basis. For example, today we published an article with the ATS lever on the key factors that drive women's happiness at work. Last week, we published some research with Boston Consulting Group on work-life balance. We've published some recent research on mentorship in Fast Company and a whole lot more. But you can find a lot of that data and research on our blog or in the general media channels. But as Joel mentioned, he is going to share my contact information. So if you're interested in finding out more about our data and research, please send me an email. But let's jump right into the first mistake that we see companies make when it comes to recruiting more women, and that is simply not doing it. So this is a mistake. It is a mistake to not make a concerted effort to understand and manage your gender diversity. And a lot of this is going to be familiar, but let me recap why. The case for gender diversity has been made over and over again in the last few years. Studies show that companies are more successful when they have more women. They have higher average returns, they have fewer incidences of fraud, they make better decisions, they have higher productivity, lower turnover, and many, many other well-established benefits, which is why it's a mistake to not make sure that you are in a good position to recruit women. Unfortunately, a lot of the same research that is telling us about the benefits of gender diversity is also showing us that we are decades, if not centuries, away from gender equality at work. So there is a ton of work to be done, especially given the fact that in just a few short years, women are going to be well over 50% of the talent pool that you are recruiting from. And here is the thing about this. We as women, thanks to all this research, we know that not all workplaces are created equal when it comes to supporting us. We know that it's important to research companies to make sure that we're entering an environment where we're going to be able to succeed. And because of that, it's really, really important for you to actively manage your culture and your recruiting process to make sure that you're not just attracting more women, but that you're also able to create environments where these women can thrive. There is some good news, which is that more and more companies are taking action and making commitments to supporting women in the workplace. This is a slide that shows just a few of the leaders on this front. These are companies that are committing lots of capital toward gender diversity initiatives. They're creating specific roles within their organizations to manage gender, as well as general diversity. They are getting out there and engaging with women on new hiring and recruiting platforms that are specific to women, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But again, I just wanted to highlight some of the leaders in this industry, and we're seeing a lot of other companies follow suit. So that was the first mistake, is not making this a priority. The second mistake is focusing just on moms. When we see companies talk about the creative, women-focused benefits that they're introducing, we tend to see a lot of perks that are focused on one very specific group of women, and that's moms, and early stage moms at that. So these are creative benefits like support for freezing eggs, or we heard about the crazy benefit of flying nannies. There's been a lot of publicity around maternity clothes stipends. And I think it's easy for a company to fall into the trap of thinking that mom friendly equates to female friendly. So this is the second mistake companies are making, equating female friendly benefits with benefits that support working moms specifically. Through the
I
match tool that I
have to
told you
jump
about
in
earlier. Oh, yes, go ahead, Joel.
I just have to show my appreciation for using the SNL Mom Jeans commercial as your gift. And I
Yes,
encourage anyone who hasn't seen that to go to YouTube after this and search for Mom Jeans SNL and watch the commercial. I
yeah,
had to
it
chime in on
is a
that.
classic.
Definitely, definitely.
And hopefully there are some other good references from SNL to come that everyone recognizes. Um, so yeah, so I mentioned that we have this match tool on InHer site where we're gathering data about what women want from a company. Well, now we've asked over 70,000 women specifically, which of the different factors that we collect data on are most important to you? And as a result, we now know a lot more about what women want most. And as you may have guessed from the Mom Jeans Giphy and from my preamble, women are not, on the whole, looking for mom stuff. When we looked at the responses from those 70,000 women, what we found is that the top three things that women want from companies are actually paid time off, salary satisfaction, and great coworkers. And for the great coworkers piece, I'll clarify that we specifically define that as respectful, professional, and unbiased. So what we're seeing is women want the ability to manage their own work-life balance. They want to be compensated well for the work that they do, and they want to do their work surrounded by people who respect them. And when we're looking at that same data about what are women who are coming to our site actually looking for, what are the benefits that are most important to them, we're also able to see which of our 14 factors these women are least interested in. And I'll just add that, I'm giving you the high level findings from the data, but we look at this across a ton of different cuts. We look at it across different industries, at different career levels, different fields. And these are the high level takeaways from that data. And this in particular, these areas of focus for women are consistent, whether you're early, mid, or late stage. There's some movement around some of our other metrics, but not around the things that are most important to women. This is true and pretty consistent across almost all of our cuts. So we also, looking at that data, can look at, what are the things that have a very low frequency as being selected as must-haves from a company? What are the things that women aren't looking for specifically? And here's what we found. On-site childcare and lactation rooms are one of the least sought after perks. That's under family growth support, we call that metric. I know that seems hard to believe, but in reality, these benefits that are specific to family growth support do have a pretty narrow appeal because they fit just a small segment of the population in a very specific and narrow window of their careers. I'm not saying these aren't important. I'm just telling you what women are looking for when they're evaluating a company as a whole. Mentorship programs, they also rate very low among desirable benefits for new job seekers. An interesting note about mentorship programs, according to our ratings data, a good mentorship program is incredibly hard to find. Of all of our metrics, women are the least satisfied with their mentorship programs. So it may be that women aren't looking for mentorship and they don't value it from companies because these programs, in the way that they have been implemented so far by companies, have fallen short. We did highlight in our Fast Company piece on this some of the companies that are standouts who are actually doing it well to give some best practices. So if you think you might be one of those companies that is trying to do mentorship and isn't doing it well, I encourage you to check that out. But finally, the third thing that falls to the bottom of our 14 metrics that job-seeking women are looking for is actually social activities and company-organized happy hours, game rooms, and group outings. These fall very, very low on the wish list for women. And at the same time, we know that these are a big focus area for many companies. So I think it's important to keep in mind that just like companies are all different, women are not all the same. And there is no such thing as creating a woman-friendly benefit that is going to appeal to all women. We love inventive, forward-thinking, generous perks for moms just as much as the next person, but companies really should think twice before they put all of their eggs in the mom benefit basket.
Hey,
Uh,
Ursula,
yes,
quick question. That the family support metric is interesting to me. So you surveyed 70,000 women, correct?
that's right.
So this was 70,000 that some had kids, some didn't have kids, some were pregnant, some were. This was a broad spectrum of all women, correct?
Yes, that's right.
So it could be fair to say that women who do have children, that it might be higher as a priority than women who don't have kids. Would that be fair to say?
It is fair to say, I think I mentioned that when we look at different cuts, some of these factors will shift around. So in a lot of the work that we did recently for the research for Boston Consulting Group, we started to look at some of this. When you look at where you are in your career, or whether you have children or not, how much change do we see? Uh, and even though we see some movement, those are consistently in the bottom half, even for working moms.
So it's not necessarily that companies shouldn't do this, but if they're looking to get the biggest bang for their buck and appeal to the broadest segment of the female population, this wouldn't be high on the list, is essentially what you're saying.
It is, and again, as a working mom, these are all sort of some of these things like lactation rooms and things like that are really table stakes. So I think part of what we're seeing is that women are not saying and saying this is something that I want. In some of these cases, I think these are things that they expect to get and they should get. And in other cases, when we talk about family support, it's the other end of the spectrum, which is I think for a lot of women, this idea that you're going to have on-site daycare, that isn't really an idea that you're even thinking about. That's way out of reach. So I think when it gets into family support metrics like lactation rooms, like stipends for daycare or having on-site daycare, I think it's a combination of the expectation that some of these you should definitely have, and others, you either wouldn't be using the company provided daycares anyway, or you really prefer having the say great salary to be able to decide where your kid goes to daycare on your own.
Awesome. Thanks for the color around that. Thanks.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I love the questions. So please feel free, anyone, to ask questions as we go. This is again just sort of the tip of the iceberg in terms of the data and findings we have. But moving
And
on
I'll
to
add,
mistake.
I'll add
Oh yeah.
because we had some people join late. If you have any questions, feel free to just in the chat box write your question. I'll be sure to ask Ursula. Thanks.
So moving on to mistake number 3. For us, that mistake is just checking the boxes. So we just talked about how mom benefits aren't necessarily going to get us where we need to be in terms of attracting as many women as possible to a company. But another mistake that you might make is thinking that you can just go down the list of even our 14 factors and check all of the boxes and just declare victory. So maybe if you add more women into leadership roles, you increase your maternity leave so it's above average, you get a decent paid time off policy on paper, I think it's easy to think that everything is going to be okay. But what we're seeing is that's not always the case. How things look on paper can be very different from how they are in practice. So I think it's important to remember that it's just as important how you implement policies as it is to having good policies in place. And if you've checked all the boxes, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily a great workplace for women. Joel mentioned that we ran into him at HR Tech in Chicago, and we had a booth set up, and the sign on our booth read, "Is your company female friendly?" Naturally, it got a lot of attention. It tends to get a lot of attention at conferences. But at HR Tech, one of the most common responses that we heard from people passing by was, well, our CEO, or name another high-level executive, our CEO is a woman, so I guess so. But the question that we had on our booth wasn't, do you have women at your company, or do you have women in leadership? Um, it was about whether your company is female friendly. And this is where we start to get into some of the nuance of hard policies and hard statistics versus the reality of what those policies and statistics mean. So what we see in our data is that while having a woman at the top and in leadership can be a great indicator, it doesn't necessarily mean that the women at your organization feel supported in their goal of climbing the corporate ladder, or they may not feel like they're working in a meritocracy. Are the right women in leadership? How did they get there? Do other women feel like they can get there too? Those are the types of questions that can't be answered by policies or statistics that look great on paper. There's another example I like to cite about this. We see a lot of companies really excited to talk about their amazing maternity leave policies and how many weeks they have. And again, this is the same situation where while a healthy number can be a very good indicator, it's how that policy is implemented that really matters. In fact, I would argue that it matters even more. Are parents pressured to come back early? Do they still have their jobs when they return? Those are the types of sentiment and realities that we capture as a satisfaction ratings platform that aren't going to show up when you just check the boxes. And in fact, we'll talk about this with the next mistake, but we see that there's a lot of divergence in what you have on paper and what women are really experiencing. So checking the boxes can be a dangerous mistake. It's very important to understand the soft side of your hard policies and understand the reality of what women are experiencing to make sure that you are getting things right. So how do you do that? How do you measure the soft policies? How do you know what women are really experiencing? We think it's pretty simple. You ask them. I know that sounds crazy that you would just straight up ask them, but that brings us to our fourth mistake, which is not asking the women in your organization how you're doing. Because the women who are already working for you are your best indicator of what you're getting right and where you need some work. And it's their insights that can be a really powerful tool when you're trying to make decisions about where should you focus your time, your resources, your capital to make sure that women are going to want to work for you if you hire them, or if you're looking to hire them, but also that once you do, that they're going to stay with you. It is an increasingly fluid job market, which means that you as a company have to build an environment and you have to build policies that are going to help you retain the women you attract. Because otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a position where you're just constantly trying to fill a draining bathtub or whatever that analogy is. So maybe you already have a great paid time off policy that everybody loves, but in the meantime, you've been neglecting your wellness benefits. Or maybe you've implemented a mentorship program like we talked about earlier, but the women don't feel like it's effective or they're able to take advantage of it. Or maybe you've fast-tracked a few women into leadership roles, but your female employees still don't feel great about their opportunities in the company. getting the honest feedback from your employees is critical for avoiding mistakes 2 and 3, which were either focusing on the wrong things or simply checking the boxes and assuming all the work is done. And I mean, as a company ratings platform, we know that it's scary to ask for any kind of feedback, and that's difficult for both sides when we talk about these issues. But I think it's really important for companies to remember that it is especially scary and difficult for women who may feel like internal surveys are dangerous or threatening. They never feel like they're truly anonymous. Oftentimes, you work at a company that will survey you and you don't even get to see the unfiltered results. And I think this is why third-party platforms like ours and like others exist. And ours specifically is to help women feel safe and comfortable giving their input in a way that benefits them and also benefits the companies that they work for and they want to work for. And it's really why we spent almost a year in beta testing this with women and companies, trying to make sure that we were creating a platform that could be that. It could be a place where companies could feel comfortable engaging with the feedback and the insights that we're getting because they knew how to use that data and research. And they could also feel comfortable inviting women to rate their companies on our platform. And we have a number of companies who do that. We'll actually be releasing a new featured partners page soon that highlights a lot of the companies that are doing that, because we think it's really important, and we think it's a great step for a lot of companies.
Hey,
So
Ursula,
yes.
can we dig into this for a little bit? So your recommendation is that these should be anonymous. So when you survey your work employees in general, but women in particular, your recommendation is to go anonymous. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, definitely. And even the point that I was making too about the internal surveys is that even when they are anonymous and they are conducted internally by the organization, a lot of women feel, and for very good reasons, a lot of employees feel that they're never truly anonymous, whether it is because the comments seem easily identifiable or the cuts of, the people in the department and how long they've been there, the tenure and stuff like that, that they still feel that they can be identified through those surveys. And it does sort of cloud the response that you're going to get in a lot of ways. And it makes women, especially when asked about some things, very reluctant to give some candid feedback.
So tactically, how would a company do that? Do you recommend that they say, "Hey, go to InHer site and leave feedback. It's private. It's on a third party site," or what? How would you recommend sort of doing that with a company?
Yes, so we do have a lot of companies who will do that on their own, where we'll see that they make a call to the women and actually the men as well. I'm going to remind me to come back to this about men being invited to share their opinions on women in the workplace. But so we have a lot of companies who will just do that on their own. For some of the bigger companies, we will often work with them to when they're making calls to thousands of women to make sure that it's a little bit easier to make sure that those women get to the right place and are rating the right company. And so we can do little things on our site to make it easier for women from a specific company to come and share their feedback. But the real the real focus for the company is they're saying this is a third party platform. This is anonymous. Your feedback is welcome, and we want to be held accountable for the results. We're embracing the transparency around this. One of the reasons that companies embrace the transparency on our platform is that the way that the platform works is that we're matching women to your company based on your strengths. So when a company has a bunch of women rate, and they've got a lot of metrics that they have a lot of strength in. But let's say this is a true anecdote from a meeting with a head of HR about a week ago. We were looking at her company page, and she had all this great feedback, and but she had a couple areas that were at the bottom, and they were I'm pretty sure they were wellness initiatives and the ability to telecommute. And she looked at me and she said, you know, I get that the fact that we're not strong in these areas is sort of, you know, affecting our score, our overall score. But the truth is, you can't telecommute here, and we don't have any wellness initiatives. So if those are the things that are important to the women who are researching our organization, it's important for them to know that those aren't things that they can have here. So those are some of the additional reasons why companies will invite the women to rate on the platform. They can learn about their strengths and weaknesses, and they can make sure an accurate representation of what the company offers is being put forth to the women who are researching their company.
Okay.
It's not a bad thing to not be great on all fronts. We don't expect companies to all be perfect. There is no one perfect company or one model policy. Just like women are not all looking for one specific thing. It's about making the right match.
Thanks for highlighting that.
Yes, and I also wanted to quickly mention that you know, we do invite men to rate on our platform. We don't get a ton of ratings from men, but we do find and track their responses to the surveys, and we see that they actually can spot a lot of the things that are going really well for women and areas for improvement. It helps us to highlight some of the blind spots that men in the organization may have when more men participate. And actually, I'll say that one of our co-founders, when he first started working on the site, you know, it was after he had an experience where the men and women at a company we worked for were all invited to take a survey about the women in the organization. And he got into a lot of conversations about women and realized that his perspective on what things were like for women at the company was very different from theirs. And so I think it's just a great exercise for men to participate in as well.
Do you ask gender when someone leaves feedback on your site?
We do ask gender, and it's optional, but a large percent of our users provide that.
What percent would you say are men?
So about 5 to 10% of our ratings come from men.
Okay.
And we
It's
recently
unique
did
for you guys. Like Glassdoor doesn't ask gender, so it is sort of unique that you guys do. Do you guys say that this review is from a male or female? I don't think you do that,
So
do you?
we don't. There are a lot of additional sort of filters that when you have a critical mass of data are when we do for a given company, they will be easier to release. Things like being able to look at scores and reviews based on career level or department or gender. But for us, the number one thing that we're focused on as we grow the site is we're collecting all of that data. But in terms of the usefulness for users, we want to make sure that we get the most representative picture. And as you're building your data set, it's important to make sure that it's as broad as possible. And also, you know, we do promise to women that it is a safe platform for them to rate on, and we want them to make sure that we want to make sure they feel safe doing that. And if you provide too many ways to filter down, you can lose some of that, especially early on. So it's important to make sure that you have that balance of giving additional ways to filter and also making people feel safe, especially if you're one of maybe just a few women at the organization.
Great point. Thanks.
Okay, and so this takes me to our last mistake, which is not using the new tools. It's ignoring the new stuff. We talk to companies on a regular basis who want to hire more women. And one of the most common things that we hear is that they have tried to recruit more women using the well-known big name platforms, and that they're not effectively expanding their recruiting funnel. They're having frustrating results from them. And there are a couple reasons that I think that these platforms don't deliver. One of the reasons, it's actually, you know, a double-edged sword, because it's also one of the reasons that they are so highly adopted and so useful in other cases, is that a lot of the legacy platforms that exist serve massive and very varied audiences, which can be great. But if you are specifically focused on reaching more women with your company's brand and opportunities, we describe it as maybe screaming into the wind. And the results, whether you're looking for, whether you are a company trying to get applicants or you're a woman trying to research the company, the results can be kind of difficult to sift through. And it can be difficult to parse out what's relevant to you from a lot of the other sites. We clearly are not holding our breath that these big legacy platforms are going to find innovative ways to better serve companies' diversity needs. But the good news is that there are a lot of new platforms out there that we think can help you be more effective in recruiting women. And I sort of break these new technologies out into two varieties. The first is technology that specifically serves women, and it is built to reflect their needs, to reflect their desires, how they go about a job search, what they care about. And in many cases, this is technology that specifically serves women because it has been built by women. I don't know, this is another tangent, but I was recently at a conference with Sally Krawcheck from Ellevest, and she was talking about this in the financial space. I mean, it's very difficult to get women to invest, primarily because all of the tools that are out there to get them involved in investing have been built by and for men. And so we're very lucky that now we have a lot of new technology that is being built by women to serve women's needs. One example of that that I have up here is a Prey Group. So a Prey Group specifically helps women re-enter the workforce after they've taken long career breaks. And often the women on that site who are looking for jobs are women who have been out of the workforce to either raise their family through critical growing years, or possibly to take care of an aging family. And for various reasons, they have taken a career break and are looking to re-enter. And a Prey Group is an example of a company that is specifically helping women in a way that really resonates with women because it's built by women. We, of course, are another one of those types of sites. I mean, if you look at any of the ratings platforms that are out there, any of them, you will not see the same suite of data that we are collecting. You will not see the same factors that we are having women rate and serving to women in companies as valuable, actionable data. I mean, you know, Comparably is a great example. Comparably has some great new cuts that you can look at and you can see how women rate things, but we have almost zero overlap with the things that we're measuring. And while their data is very interesting and is a whole other dimension, you know, ours has been designed and tested to be data that is valuable to and useful for women when they are making their career and company decisions. The second variety of technology, I've got a couple of these examples, Pymetrics and Blendor. These are technologies and companies that are focused on disguising the gender of applicants in the areas of your hiring process where there can sometimes be unconscious bias. So Pymetrics, for example, they were across from us at HR Tech. They create these skills-based games that match people to jobs in ways that, you know, you're blind to the gender, and there is no gender bias built into the actual games themselves. Blendor is another example of a technology that's a little similar but different. They are a blind recruiting app. So their goal is to remove bias from your recruiting process and help you look at candidates without sort of any of the unconscious bias around gender slipping into that process. I think they refer to it as sort of the voice for recruiting. And so there are a lot of other technologies out there, especially around the job posting process, who will, you know, scan through your job posting, and they'll make sure that you're not using any language that can lead to, you know, skewing your results and applicants to too highly male. And so there's a lot of great technology technology specifically for women, and technology that is focused on disguising gender. And they're both, I think, very effective. I mean, I will take one more second to make a plug for what we've built, and mention that at InHer site, you can create free profile page and share information about your brand, your culture, your benefits with hundreds of thousands of job-seeking women. You can look at on the homepage a bunch of the companies, hundreds of companies who have gone through and created their pages. And frankly, I think this is table stakes for companies who are looking to recruit more women. You know, there's no price tag, there's no barriers, and there are hundreds of thousands of women who want to learn more about your organization. So I think you should check it out. And also, if you're serious about building a gender diverse workforce, you should definitely explore some of the other tools that I mentioned. And then I just threw in a bonus mistake slide, which is pinks and purples. I just wanted to put a plug in for a quick reminder that it is 2016, and while those are lovely colors, pinks, purples, unicorns, and princesses are so last century. So when you are thinking about appealing to women, I think it's important to keep that in mind. Just to quickly recap our
Well, my
5
daughter, you
mistakes.
said that, Ursula.
Oh, that,
7-year-old.
yeah, yeah, that can be difficult for a 7-year-old to hear, but she will grow out of that.
I know, I know.
Um,
I have a question. What you've been doing this for a while. What do you see, the next 3 to 5 years in sort of the employment review space? What do you think it's going to look like in 3 to 5 years?
oh, that's a great question. And I actually have followed and think I have a pretty good pulse on on your thinking of it sort of fragmenting and serving tons of different needs. Um, I think that's certainly the direction it's gone. You know, there is no sort of one quick and easy view of a company that's going to really resonate with with all of these different groups that make up the whole job applicant pool. I will say that I think that it will fragment, and it has fragmented to a point, but that you really need to have a large enough group that you're serving to make this kind of technology work. You need mass adoption, and you need mass amounts of data to build very effective ratings platforms for individual groups. And so, I mean, it's one of the reasons why a company like Glassdoor started big and broad. But when you look at our site with 18,000 companies rated and hundreds of thousands of women, once you start to get to smaller groups, it's just not going to be as effective of a platform. I do think that we're seeing some interesting twists on the company ratings platform. So I mentioned Comparably. I'll mention them again. I think that they're sort of showing the what you would get more in an employee engagement survey and making that more transparent and widely accessible, where you're talking about whether meetings are effective and stuff like that. So there's this combination of ratings platforms that serve segments of the job applicant pool, and there's also this other type, which is that look at different metrics. But I do think that this only goes so far. And while we actually see a number of other audiences that our platform could serve, it is very important that you stick with sort of the largest size group for to make a platform like this work. I mean, I'll just mention again, women are going to be more than 50% of the workforce in just a few years, which is why I think that this is the right kind of technology to help them. Also, women face a lot of very specific and real challenges in the workforce. So, I mean, when you have that combination of a critical volume, and you also have specific needs and challenges, that's where those ratings platforms emerge, and that's where I think they can be the most powerful.
Okay. Great. Well, we're at almost 45 minutes of the presentation. No questions have come in. You still have a few moments to do that. But if you have questions outside of the webinar here, you can contact Ursula directly on Twitter at InHer site, unless Ursula, you have a better means by which people can contact you.
Yes,
I also encourage you.
oh, yes, I
Yeah,
was
go
just going
ahead.
to say, feel free to just email us at hello@inhersite.com, and the whole team gets those messages.
Oh, isn't that cute? Hello at InHer.com. So yes, you can contact her directly. She's also on LinkedIn. You can also connect with me directly at Joel Cheeseman or at Ratedly on Twitter. Ursula, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Great information. Everyone, there will be a recording of this, so we'll send that out in the next couple of days. You can share that with coworkers or whomever. And other than that, thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. And Ursula, again, big thanks.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.